How do we want to connect? That's the question we need to ask ourselves as we continue to watch these digital town squares evolve as they grow. For nearly 30 years, we've witnessed these social media platforms continue to throw more resources in attempts to manage what's clearly unmanageable at scale. This additional help could be expanding moderation teams, developers building more safety tools, or tweaking algorithms. And yet, despite all of this, the evidence of harm, especially to children and young adults, is staggering. I can't highlight specific examples here, but research by social psychologist Jonathan Haidt, NYU professor Scott Galloway, journalist Richard Reeves, and AEI fellow Christine Rosen have often documented some of the harms by being on social media, backed by data which can easily be referenced online. So what's the problem? Well, there's several actually. Some of you may already know them, but I'll highlight a few just to set the stage. Number 1. The top social media platforms were designed back when we were still trying to solve the discovery problem on our desktops and released before modern smartphones. A hard pivot away at this point can cause massive economic loss for the company, businesses that rely on the platform along with talented people losing high-paying jobs. Number 2. Covering all bases has made it difficult to pivot as a common denominator approach had to be applied because of all the devices with different screen sizes and web browsers that had to be considered. Some tough decisions regarding compatibility might have to be made in order to provide a much better experience for all. Number 3. Noise being the default state makes it significantly harder to make meaningful connections, but it was deemed necessary to support these social networks via advertising. As a result, there are now people using, quote, old-school methods such as speed dating to make connections, in large part because of how inadequate social media and dating apps have been in doing so. Number 4. Emotional and visual content trends faster than facts, and thus social media has always been ripe for weaponization. Newer features such as community notes or added context are just web band-aids in attempts to address the problems of disinformation. Mainstream cable news is notorious for this, and considering that fact-checkers couldn't keep up with legacy media, it's foolish to think that it stands a chance on global, always connected, automatically refreshing feeds designed to maximize engagement via algorithmic amplification. And number 5, banning members is often ineffective as most can just create new accounts. Requiring ID verification brings its own set of risks, including possible, permanent deplatforming. It's a complicated topic that will require a thoughtful approach as services continue to evolve. The truth is that it's become more profitable for many to react than to acquire knowledge via research or investigations. As a result, we've become a country full of profit-seeking reactionaries, regardless of political ideology, and in turn has contributed to our current epistemic crisis. The fact is that the average American spends over 5 hours a day on their phone. These things are essential for work, life, and staying connected. With declining public payphones and dedicated landlines, smartphones are not going anywhere, so we should accept that this is how people prefer to communicate, rather than to try to convince them to stop using these essential tools. Besides, there is no evidence of a retail approach like this ever working at scale, and I don't expect this to be any different than the failed attempts of the past. We should meet people where they are, and the public is screaming at us that they want to continue to connect via these devices and are willing to put up with the nonsense on these noisy platforms to do so. So we need to rethink everything. We need to build new, better platforms that will help us connect similar to how we do in person. We start with the individual, then outward, instead of the noise being the default state. Think of it like the start of your day. You decide the direction you want to go in. Encourage spontaneity and introduce things such as subtle negotiation and social consequences, similar to what we experience in person. We should be able to get together with friends in a group with minimal friction. I'm talking about a platform that mimics real town squares with a strong proximity bias to help us rebuild our local communities again. It should have everything else you've come to expect from social media, but just a whole lot better because it's centered around you, not the noise that surrounds us. While thinking of these design choices, it's also important to talk about safety and our data. I'm assuming most listening are fans of cryptocurrencies, so I'll touch on Chia now. I remain highly skeptical of most crypto projects, but there is potential with proof of work, or in this case proof of space and time chains, that could allow back-end monetization without affecting those refusing to add an additional monthly service fee. With Chia, this will be in the form of installation size. Assuming the new plot format holds, K28 and K30 plots can play a significant role in where the average member is farming without feeling much of an impact. While every nickel individually won't make much of a difference, spread throughout an entire social media platform, those nickels could eventually prove to be substantial enough to not rely on advertising as a primary source of revenue. Of course, a monthly or yearly pay option should always be available for those who choose to go that route, but I assume that most people will be perfectly fine allocating a few gigabytes of storage if the app is providing enough value, as many find with AAA video games on their phones today. Also, while many blockchains have different types of reward systems for participating, they are first decentralized databases. It would be a shame to not make use of this powerful tool to also verify certain activity. One thing I've had in mind is the ability to verify an update to a record on an external blockchain explorer after the person decides to delete their profile. There are also some interesting things going on with Michael Taylor's Dig network, but much of those technical details will have to be figured out by others, as I am merely laying out the vision along with the designs to get the ball rolling. To start wrapping this up, I think our current relationship with social media feels like the beginning to the end of an era. Many are just angrily using these platforms because we've been conditioned to do so on a daily basis for over 2 decades now. Those old enough know what I'm talking about, as this has happened a few times on the internet. For example, when AOL was at their peak, most people were limited to dial-up connections at home. But once DSL and cable broadband started rolling out throughout the country, more people started looking for superior alternatives, as the all-in-one convenience, but subpar pieces of the AOL package no longer made sense to them. Early social media platforms operated in similar noisy ways when we were primarily connecting via desktops. But now that the discovery problem has been solved, you mostly hear about the harm caused as they've grown. Ads and influencers promoting scams, AI-assisted reply and porn bots infiltrate threads almost immediately, and it becomes a game of whack-a-mole to have a genuine conversation. This information, which spreads in a matter of seconds around the globe, proves that in one sense we are more connected than we've ever been. However, at the same time, since the noise is spread across the countries instantaneously, it has drowned out the trusted local, but often smaller voices attempting to reach out to us with important updates as to what's going on with our communities. The top social media platforms today are stuck for the reasons I highlighted earlier. To fix this, it will take a large, talented team from many different backgrounds and a lot of resources to launch something new. So the final question I pose is this: are we really going to continue on platforms built around noisy, insidious feedback loops that continue to tear us apart? I don't think so, and it's time to change that before we suffer catastrophic consequences. Thanks for listening. The first email has been sent and updates should start trickling out soon.